It's a poem, and so I'd like to share with you the poem I wrote for my mother before she died, called When You Are Gone. I want to wear my grief like a cardigan, with pockets of dried herbs to touch and recall you. So many songs sung to remind me I was chosen, wanted, and celebrated joyously into the skein of your story. I will no longer be wombed and lambed by you, love, my curls petted with soft stories. My woolen longing will pill and wear, rubbing against the pain of missing you, buttons loose and longing for the way we used to fit, one soul embracing the other, snug and warm. When I savor the dances we've squared, the roads we've traveled, the laughter we've woven, the hurt we've forgiven, the hope we've given, I will know you are part in gratitude to my salty sadness. I remember life is a chance for enthusiasm and adventure, despite sweet spasms of sorrow. This tree we spring from has roots we cannot see, and time mounding under us, pushing low branches down, become the roots we use to grip the foundation of ancestors, bound together forever to face the storms of living. How do I say goodbye to the air I have breathed? How do I let go the umbilical cord we have shared? I wrap my grief around me like a cardigan, nestling into the blessing you have been and will always be, clothing me in infinite love.
If I speak in the tongues of humans and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have faith to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I am nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Wanda Jean Swanson was born on a Friday during Eastertide in 1934, and almost a year ago, she left this mortal life, having received her dearest final wish, a wish that captured how she most wanted to live. She spent last Christmas together with her family, and now you are spending this Christmas together, remembering her and her love. That Christmas a year ago was filled, I am told, with singing, dancing, and stories, with caring for children and great-grandchildren. It was a Christmas shaped by love, the very love that the Apostle Paul describes when he says that love rejoices in truth. It bears all things. It believes in each one of you. It hopes all things, endures all things. How do you capture the layered and intricate life of Wanda Jean Swanson? The poet Walt Whitman wrote once, "I breathe the fragrance of myself and know it and like it." Truly, we have breathed the fragrance of Wanda Jean Swanson. We knew it, we liked it, and we delighted in it. To her children, Kristen, Mark, and Celia, the fragrance of her life was the smell of popcorn by the fire as the family read books galore, each child bringing home a bag from the library filled that they devoured together. Her life smelled like campfires on family vacations to national parks, the fragrance of mountain streams, and even that uniquely 1970s aroma of a roast strapped in tinfoil to the car of the family vehicle as you zipped across the Great Plains. It was the smell of being cared for. It was the smell of love, humor, creativity, and curiosity all wrapped together. Her life was the fragrance of love. It wasn't a dull or drab fragrance. It was playful and imaginative. It was patient and kind, as the apostle said. To her grandchildren, the fragrance of grandmom's life was the smell of a pantry stocked with cereal, the sweet smell that David remembers while hiding among the corn checks. Her grandchildren felt the safety that her love provided, the love that never insists on its own way, but instead it created room for laughter, space for imagination, and a soft place for questions. So how do you capture the fullness of a life well lived like Wanda's? For Wanda Jean Swanson truly contained multitudes. And like the love Paul described, she was endlessly curious. Her love was a love that listened, a love that believed the stories that you would tell as her children and grandchildren. It was a love that believed other people's lives mattered. She listened carefully to you and asked thoughtful questions. Her children remember this, and her grandchildren, that she didn't settle for the surface, was what one of you said. She wanted to know who you were, what inspired you, what stirred your heart, what you longed for. She wanted to understand your purpose, because love pays attention. Love listens. Love honors the sacred mystery of another life, the life of her children and grandchildren. And that same love flows forward into her great-grandchildren. Wanda Jean Swanson was born in April of 1934 in Junction City, Kansas. Though never knowing her father because he died in a farming accident, she received the love of her stepfather, Milton. As a child, she roamed freely on the farm with her sister and cousins, a life with wonder and curiosity, a life where curiosity was as wide as the Kansas sky. At the University of Kansas, she met Harold. And Harold says he fell in love with her in the first conversation. And after a first date of square dancing, a theme that will continue in her life, that of dancing, 3 short months later, they married. And 9 days later, they were off to Norway. They were headed to Europe that was beginning to feel a little bit of trepidation. This man she had met only 3 months earlier, and she was on an adventure now where she would be there far away. Yet as the ship drew near the coastline of Norway for the first time, they were on deck, and the light of a chain of islands was in the distance, and Harold and Wanda broke into hymn. For Wanda truly was a cradle Methodist. The hymn burst forth, and they sang together, "Let the low lights be burning. Send a gleam across the wave. Some poor fainting seaman you may rescue, you may save. As they sang together, she knew she was secure in the love of this man that she had met 3 months ago, but would build a lifetime of life together. Together, they raised 3 children, navigating life in Tennessee, Iowa, and beyond. Kristen was born in Tennessee as Harold studied radiation at Oak Ridge National Laboratories, to which you joked that might explain some things as he studied radiation. Then after moving to Des Moines, Mark and Celia were born. That home was filled with books and music, curiosity and learning. Far from the farms they grew up on, they learned how to raise kids in the city lights of Des Moines. And on a walk to work at Drake University one day, Harold found a house up along a ravine next to a church, and he thought, oh, we can raise our children there, a small haven in the midst of the city. And there, they created a home where love roamed among the trees and the creek. And the children could run freely as long as they were within earshot of that whistle from a cereal box. There, they created a home where love did not boast or compete, except perhaps in a good game of Scrabble, I am told. Yet Wanda and Harold honored each person's gift. It was a home where intellect was treasured, where justice mattered, where women's voices deserved freedom and respect, and where art and music were essential food for the soul. It was a house where kids learned to love pianists like Arthur Rubinstein and Van Cliburn. And that house would later become the same place, a magical place for grandchildren. A basement filled with wonder, dress-up clothes, hiding spaces, a swing, a backyard that ran into the woods and the creek, and you'd come back from exploration to enjoy some raspberries with Grandma. And there were always songs, always an apple pie that was worth hiding from one another so that it lasted the whole holiday. Wanda's love did not delight in scarcity. It multiplied delight. Wanda's love made sure every grandchild had a stuffed animal, a song to sing, and a place to belong. And travel was one way she stirred that curiosity in her family. How she reminded you that the world is wide and beautiful, and that God's image shines in every corner. Whether in Costa Rica or Tanzania, I am told a wacky Wanda showed up. Playful, laughing, fully alive, with the mere plying of a margarita, wacky Wanda would appear. For Wanda's love hoped for all things, but it also danced, it sang, and sometimes it wore matching polo shirts in Tanzania, as instructed by the organizer of the trip, Wanda herself. And that love she had, it deepened over time. She and Harold shared a partnership where each honored the mind and spirit of the other. When Harold's memory began to fade, their love did not fade. For their love never ended, as Paul wrote. And indeed, it did not. Even when grief came as Harold left this life, Wanda held fast to the truth that joy and sorrow can coexist side by side, and she set out for Rachel's wedding, and there she danced in the rain. Rachel said she reminded us she wasn't fragile. She rejoiced even as she still held the aching absence of Harold within her. Even in her final season, her heart remained open to loving others fully and vigorously. She flew to Seattle to connect with her grandbaby, to make sure love would be planted deep in little Madrona's life. Love that is patient, love that is kind, and love that endures even to this day. And last Christmas, her last on this earth, her deepest wish was simple and profound: to be together. To sing, to tell stories, to live what Paul the apostle wrote. He said, "Now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. But the greatest of these is love." And that is exactly what happened. 16 people gathered in one house, music, laughter, peace, a life gathered like a harvest, the fruit of 9 decades of living and loving. For Wanda's love was patient. Wanda's love was kind. It bore all things. It believed in all her children and grandchildren. It hoped for all that is good in the world, and her love never failed. And now, because love never ends, her love lives in you and in me. The love she practiced all of her life is now holding all of us. For the apostle says, "Though we see in a mirror dimly now, soon we shall see face to face." And we hope we will see Wanda and Harold embracing one more time, for their love remains in each of us. Thanks be to God for the gift of Wanda Jean Swanson. Amen.
Mom lived her life by showing love, by being a nurturer, a caretaker, an organizer, a curious learner, a volunteer, and in taking in nature, music, art, and cultures of the world in enthusiastic wonder. I want to speak just a little bit more about her role as a nurturer, her role as a mother. Being the oldest, I got Mom's undivided attention for 3 years. While I don't consciously remember this time, I know that she sang and read and held me and was devoted to me. And as a young child, my memories are of feeling safe and loved. She made most of my clothes, and she cooked healthy and nutritious and tasty meals. And she sat on the floor with all of us to play. I remember that. As I grew older, I specifically remember going to the movies or to civic music concerts with just me and Mom and Dad. And so many of my most beloved books are those that she recommended to me as a young person. I remember going to the library and she would say, you know, I think you would enjoy this book. When I was in elementary school, my best friend Patty had Barbie and Ken, and Patty's mom and my mom decided that Patty should have Barbie and Ken, and I should have Midge and Alan, because Midge and Alan had red hair. So anyway, one Christmas I received a very large box of clothes for Midge, including a beautiful wedding dress and this suit on my mother. That Midge is showing there. So that was truly a labor of love that my mom did. Mom and Dad were always so proud and enthusiastic about my accomplishments in school and activities, and Mom and I all over the Midwest as I interviewed for residency positions at the end of medical school. As we drove and worked on we also worked on wedding plans, and while I was back in school, she worked very hard on the wedding since Al and I were both still in school, and we had to plan the wedding from afar. Mom and I always remembered the trip together fondly, and we would also laugh a lot about it because there was an incident when we were sharing a bed in a motel, and during the middle of the night, I scared Mom because I leapt out of bed with a scream, and I had dreamed that a snake was in bed with us. I didn't see in planning a wedding. So that was always a memory that we shared together. Mom was so excited to be a grandmother, and she came and spent several weeks with us helping day and night caring for premature twins after Nathan and David were born. And I remember that time with a lot of, I don't know, it was very hard, but it was also a very, I was on bed rest for 10 weeks while I was pregnant with Karin, and many people helped us, including my parents and Al's parents, and Mom and Dad moved us to our present house, and Mom set up the entire kitchen while I was lying on the couch, feeling helpless, and there were so many things that Mom did that were just, incredibly selfless on her part. She relished the time she was able to spend with her grandchildren, and no one was more interested in their activities and their accomplishments. Lived here in La Crosse. She was a constant presence and source of support about everything in my life, and she was a listening ear and the shoulder to cry on. She was the person who could be relied on to be interested in my family's activities and accomplishments and in my own joys and struggles. We shared frustrations with politics, our enjoyment of books, concerts, and activities, our discovery of new programs to watch on TV, really about everything. And I do now, and I will always continue to miss her so very much.
No props, but Kleenex. The last year or so, excuse me, I've been thinking a lot about moms and their children. My first grandchild, Madrona, was born about 1.5 years ago, and I've loved watching the love between her and her parents develop and grow. Since Mom's diagnosis last fall, I spent a lot of time thinking not only about what a wonderful mom she was, but also what made her so wonderful. Our parents did most everything, especially parenting, as a partnership, but we all learned pretty early on which parent specialized in what. What Mom focused on was everything. While Dad spent hours teaching us to read or identify crown vetch or whatever, Mom did everything else that was needed to enrich our lives. The music lessons, the campfire, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, the preparing for camping trips, so many things I can't remember and never even really noticed at the time. What we all remember is Mom's amazing organizational skills. The one thing that gets lost in those skills is what a smart person Mom was. As we grew older, Mom talked about the kinds of careers she might have pursued if America in the 1950s and early 60s had been more supportive of women working outside the home. As I think about what an intelligent, well-rounded person she was, I realize she could have succeeded at pretty much any career she chose. And while I wish for her that she had had that opportunity,
One benefit of waiting almost an entire year before having Mom's celebration of life is it's given me a chance to think about her influence on my life over a sustained period of time. Even so, trying to sum up how important she was and still is to me is impossible. We were deeply and profoundly connected even before I was born. She was my entire world for the first 9 months of existence and for many years after. Even in my adolescence, especially aged 15, as I was pushing her away in order to gain my own independence, she was still home, She was my shoulder to cry on. She was the one I asked for advice, whether or not I followed it. She was my friend, my mentor, and my beloved mommy. We're a unit. We could never play one against the other. They were a united front. They were best friends. They still would tell stories about their life together, and all the wonderful memories that they shared. Mark and I were just talking on the drive over here that we never saw them fight a connection. And they were also very demonstrative with each other. I remember that we would come into the kitchen and they might be canoodling or kissing each other, and we'd, no, gross, we might say, but I knew that that actually was really an important thing to see as parents who loved each other and were affectionate with each other. I know for a fact that that has influenced my ideas of what relationships should be. Dear, dear, dear friends who also really, truly loved each other in so many different ways. And they were both very affectionate and very cuddly with all of us. I remember when Mark was going through his adolescence, where again, many boys would have pushed away that sort of demonstrative affection, he would very much cuddle with both our parents, that was just a part of how we interacted with each other. And my whole life, I knew that no matter what, even if I made decisions that maybe they were not quite on board with, that I was loved. I was supported, I was championed with whatever it is I wanted to do in my life. Mom and I, in a way, shared something in that we were both artists in a family of scientists, and we sort of shared that, and they very enthusiastically supported me to become, well, first originally a theater and vocal music major. I had to drop the vocal music major after I had strep throat for 3 months straight my freshman year of college, until Mom insisted to the doctor that he finally take my tonsils out. She said, you've been saying she'll grow out of it. She hasn't grown out of it. Take them out. She was quite fierce. And then they supported when I added the English major, which was something that Mom and I had in common. And it was not really until I started visiting school friends in their homes or heard friends talk about disliking or hating their parents that I began to realize how lucky we kids were. We not only loved our parents, we liked them. We enjoyed spending time with them. And Mom and Dad enjoyed spending time with us and supporting everything that we did. They came to as many concerts, plays, graduation ceremonies, parties, events, whatever. They came to as many things as they could. The folks used to come up when I would throw big parties, and my friends loved sitting down and talking with my parents. Many of my friends have said a little wistfully, I wish I had parents like your parents. They moved, all three of us, several times. They joked once about how they added up how many times they rented vehicles to move us from place to place. And I pretty much can find anything in either of my siblings' kitchens, because chances are pretty good that Mom organized their kitchen during a move-in, like she did with mine. Family camping vacations were a huge part of our childhood. We loved them, and Mom was the most enthusiastic of all of us, and she had everything organized down to a T. And I remember that she delighted doing all the household tasks if it was on a camping trip. And she would often say, like, cooking and washing dishes outside in the mountain air was just such a totally different thing than doing them at home. I was really lucky as the youngest child to get them to myself. You know, Kristen had them to herself when she was little and doesn't remember it, but I got to have them to myself when I was in high school. And then again, when I went to graduate school at Drake, I lived with the folks. While I was in school, I did a 2-year program in a year and 2 summers, and I would come home from classes and we would watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy and eat dinner together, and they'd ask about my studies, and it was really an amazing thing to be able to become peers and friends with my parents. You know, we camped, we traveled, we ate out, we went to cultural events together. And Mom and I really enjoyed each other's company because we shared a love of books, talking, just hanging out. A couple times she'd come up to the cities, and when they moved up to La Crosse, I helped pick out their furniture. And then again, more recently, actually just last year, she came and helped me pick out new furniture for my place and some things for her place. Mom was the keeper of the family stories, what I like to call the family mythology. She was the one that, when we would gather as a family, would initiate telling of the story again and again, every year, again and again, we'd get the stories. And I always like to say she had little stories about each of us, our little mythology of us. So my story is, people often ask where I got my name Celia, and the short version is I was named after a contestant on Password. The longer version is that when Dad had open heart surgery in 1963, which was a very new thing, a woman that kept my mother company while Dad was in surgery was named Celia, and later, and the mythology was that after Dad successfully got through his heart surgery, they decided to celebrate by having a 3rd child, which was me. And right before I was delivered, they hadn't picked out a name, and they were watching TV, and there was a contestant on Password named Celia that reminded them of this kind woman who had cared for Mom while Dad was in surgery. And she always called me her joy juice baby. Because when I was a toddler, I was ill quite often and in the hospital. And when I was about 2, she said the nurses came out and they said, you know, your little baby, she's so sick, but what do you feed her? Joy juice. She's such a happy baby. And so Mom always called me her joy juice baby. After Dad died, I was able to support her as she learned how to live alone, something that I've done most of my adult life. And we took one last wonderful trip after going to Rachel's wedding. She and I went on an elder hostel tour of the San Juan Islands and watching whales. And, you know, we even celebrated it was their anniversary in June. And it was her first anniversary without my dad. And, you know, we just had a day of whale watching and grieving together. When I think about all of Mom's influences on me, which were so many, her love of reading is a big one. Mom was an avid reader. There were books everywhere in our house. And Dad used to joke that he started reading the same books Mom was reading just so he could share in this aspect of her life, since it took up a sizable chunk of her time. He'd laugh and he'd say, "If you can't beat 'em, join 'em." And I'm the one kid that followed in her footsteps as an English major. I'm also a voracious reader, and Mom and I loved to chat about books and poetry, particularly Shakespeare, theater, and other literary experiences. One of my favorite memories of Mom is when she and her cousin Aileen decided to join me in a trip to London for a college course I was teaching called Literary London. While they didn't do the semester's coursework, they came along on the trip, and Mom decided to do the project I had set for my students, which was to research one of the authors we read and give a presentation to the group at the site we visited in London that was connected to the author. And Mom decided to research the poet John Donne. He's the one that wrote the poem Death Be Not Proud, which you may have heard of. And she proudly gave her presentation in St. Paul's Cathedral, where John Donne was buried. Not only was it great for my students to see an elder join in and delight in the learning process, it also validated me as a professional, as a professor, and made me so proud to be her daughter. Another major influence Mom had on me was her enormous capacity for enthusiasm. She had a great sense of adventure and play, and part of the fun for her was that Mom really enjoyed the anticipation part of the adventure. She would get a little giddy when she shared ideas about what we could do on our vacations, and all the details were lovingly prepared in advance, complete with organizational systems. She never met an organizational system that she didn't love, and if something didn't have a system, she'd invent one. Ask me about how many boxes, drawers, and storage containers there are in my house with her handwritten lists of all the contents in them. Mind you, it was a bit wasted on me since if I can't see it, it doesn't exist, but she did her best to help me be an organized person. One of the things that she organized was our pop-up tent trailer. She just thought, we had various incarnations over the years, but they were never exactly right. And so she would design these systems, like she had this whole pantry that was hung on the rods of it that fit just perfectly. So Dad's job was to build whatever organizational idea that she came up with. I always thought she might have had a great career as a designer of pop-up tent trailers because she had it down to a T. Despite her propensity to be very organized, she also was very capable of spontaneous adventures. My junior year of college, when I tentatively asked my folks if it would be okay, maybe possible, I could go on this college trip that was happening for a January term in London, immediately Mom said, why just go for a month? I think you should go for the whole semester, and then when the semester is over, your dad and I will come over and we'll travel through England together. Like pretty soon, it wasn't just about my study abroad. It was about all the things we would do and see in England. And my study abroad semester was life-changing for me, as she knew it would be, since her time living in Norway had been life-changing for her. And yes, Mom and Dad came over, and they and my dear friend Maureen and I drove all over England, staying in B&Bs in people's homes, seeing castles and cathedrals, pubs and theaters, watching Morris dancers in Caerphilly, and convincing the ticket sellers to let us into a donors-only performance of T.S. Eliot's Murder in the Cathedral in Canterbury Cathedral, where the historical incident took place. One favorite memory from this trip was when we stayed with a middle-aged couple in Cornwall who had spent much of his military career living in India and Africa, telling us that they used to pretend they were Katharine Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart in African Queen. They were quintessentially and stereotypically British, just like all of the books and TV shows and movies that had led us to believe a certain type of British person behaved. And as Mom and I were both avid Anglophiles, we kept catching each other's glances of delight with every confirmation of our stereotypes. And when the gentleman actually harumphed, I thought Mom and I would disgrace ourselves as we struggled to keep our giggles to ourselves. And when we finally got back into privacy, we laughed and laughed and laughed about it. Just how it just fulfilled every stereotype we'd ever heard of an English gentleman. Again, as an adult, I was really, really lucky is that I got to travel with Mom and Dad in my adulthood. And they were such fun travel companions. One trip in their later years, they were a little less confident to travel by themselves, and so they asked me if I wanted to go to Eastern Europe with them, with the deal being that if I did all the driving, they'd pay for my entire trip. What a deal. Of course, this trip happened because I was doing a study abroad program in Prague, and Mom saw it as an opportunity to latch onto my trip as an excuse to travel themselves. We had the broad overview of the trip planned, but kept ourselves open to spontaneous adventures. As is often true of travel, the best stories and memories come from when things don't quite go to plan. We had been in Hungary, in Budapest, and we were driving back to Prague, and I said, well, we're right here at the border with Slovakia. The Czech Republic and Slovakia are now separate countries. Why don't we drive back through Slovakia? And immediately they said, absolutely. Well, Slovakia, unlike the Czech Republic, was still very much in the grip of the Soviet system, and it was quite a poor country. And we ended up in a little industrial town called Nitra. We ended up there not by choice, but because in the roundabout, we could not figure out which exit to take. We kept going round and round and round and round, and it was late in the day, and I was tired of driving. And we had this ongoing joke, like if it was a bad day of driving, I'm like, Mom, I'm having a beer at dinner tonight. And during the Nitra, I'm like, Mom, I'm having 2 beers at dinner tonight. And she said, honey, I'm buying them for you. We finally, I said, I think I saw a sign for a Best Western back, before we got into the roundabout. So we made our way out and followed the signs, just kept getting lost. We couldn't find the Best Western. And some gentleman was pulling out of his driveway, and, we pulled down Best Western. And he's like, oh, yes, yes, yes. And he jumped in his car and gestured us, and we got there. And Mom's like desperate to go to the bathroom. So happy we're pulling into the hotel, which was not open yet. So somebody at the desk said, okay, here's this other lodge. And we got to this weird, creepy, used to be a hunting lodge that used to be out, I'm sure, in the woods, but was now in some strange pocket of suburbia. One guy was the whole operation. He checked us in, he carried our bags, he cooked us dinner, the whole shebang. And when we're at dinner, Mom and I looked at each other and we said, Norman Bates. And we laughed, and we laughed, and we laughed, and we laughed. And that young man must have thought we were insane. We were laughing so hard. Laura mentioned that we went to Tanzania as a family, and what I remember about that is Mom had come into some money after selling the last of her parents' farm, and she basically proposed to all of us, children and grandchildren, we can give you the money now, you can get it in your inheritance, or we can take you all to Tanzania. And within 45 minutes, 12 busy adults cleared their calendar for the same 15 days, and we had a wonderful trip. One other really big influence, again, Laura, you touched on this very nicely, and my mother was so kind. She was a bit of an introvert, but she was kind to everyone. She was kind to store clerks. I mean, as a teenager, I was really embarrassed, but she would chat with the people checking her out at the grocery store, and she lived a life of service to others. And as I said before, my friends loved her. During the COVID lockdown, Mom, I know, really missed her book clubs. She was in a couple of book clubs. And I was in a book club that had decided to go online. And so for that little space of time, she joined my book club over Zoom. And my friends were very impressed with her and how intelligent she was, and how much she dug into the literature that she read. They were very impressed by what a smart and capable and interesting and fun woman she was. At my 60th birthday party a year and a half ago, Mom came up, and she was the life of the party. All my friends took time to sit with her at the table and be regaled by stories, and they all like, you just have the best mother. I'm like, yes, I do. I will say my boyfriends were all a little intimidated by her at first, but eventually when she warmed to them, when she thought they were good enough for me, then she embraced them and invited them into the family, into the fold. Dad was always a pushover. Anybody who was a good conversationalist he was happy with, but Mom took a little extra time to warm up. Mom and Dad always liked to tell us how proud they were of the people, the adults we'd grown into. And they often laughed, saying that they almost strained their shoulders from patting themselves on the back for raising such great kids and grandkids. And I know that Mom also reveled in becoming a great-grandmother as well as a grandmother. And I know we will tell Oren and Madrona and soon-to-be Finn many stories about their great-grandparents and how much they were raised in love. As proud as they were of us, I am proud of the parents they were. They were very intentional parents. They did not do anything accidentally. They made choices, and they made choices together. Really great parents, and I think about this often, just how much they made an effort to support us and to not be nosy in our lives and to not insist that we do anything in a particular way. They really just let us become who we were. While I miss both of them dearly, I still find myself every day thinking, oh, I want to tell Mom about this. I know that both of them are in me and influencing me still. As Mark always likes to say, we were very smart in picking our parents. We had the best parents in the world. And I honor all the ways that Mom is a part of me, and I choose to live my life with enthusiasm, a sense of adventure, lots of books, a love of the arts, of world travel, and of choosing service to the world and kindness to everyone.
For those who don't know or who are joining us online, my name is David. I'm one of Wanda and Harold's grandchildren and son to Kristen and Al, brother to Nathan and Karin, husband to Abby, and father to Oren, who is sleeping peacefully here in the front row and looks very comfortable there. So one of the many blessings in being a parent to what he would describe as a 3 3/4-year-old is the revolving door of beautiful questions that leave you wondering at the mystery of the universe, and also being a little bit overstimulated at the end of a long day with your head resting on a child-sized pillow. Questions with somewhat straightforward answers like, what is a quasar? Or what does crepuscular mean? An answer that I knew from having such a grandfather. And also questions with less clear answers like, what are people? An answer I've pondered from having such a grandmother. And, of course, the ever unanswerable, what is death? The answer to those kinds of questions requiring balance, with a reply that is comforting enough to fall asleep to, but also aligned or at least adjacent to what you believe to be true, if there is such a thing in the world of many truths. And for plants and animals that we see in death, we talk about how they turn back into soil to create the conditions for new seeds to grow and new life to flourish. And for me, this is a form of rebirth. And to my mind, something of us lives on after death in the soil we build and cultivate in our lives, in those that we love and in those who love us, in our wider community of relations. What are we all here, if not the new life from the soil of the love that Wanda and Harold built throughout their lives? Living on now in all of us, in the stories we are sharing today, in the lessons and worldviews imparted from their loving hearts. Love is really who she was for me, my grandmom, an embodiment of what I know of love, whose voice resonates in so many moments of the day for me. You know, I hear her voice when I read stories to Oren, some of the same books that she read to me, to us, when we were young. Caps for Sale was a personal favorite, and one she read with Oren as well, the refrain going, caps for sale, 50 cents a cap, will always be read in her voice, bring a smile to my face, and make me reflect on how reasonably priced caps were back in the day. I feel her presence in the pure magic of music, and when we sing silly songs in the car, or when I travel someplace new with an orientation toward learning and understanding. You know, part of the blessing in the way that she passed was having the gift of her presence in our home, which naturally, of course, had its own dimension of hardship and heartbreak. On a day almost exactly a year ago, when we were heading to the airport after a holiday spent all together, I knelt by her side in her room as she sat in her chair, holding her hands, knowing with clarity that it would be the very last time. And as I look into her loving eyes, I got to thank her for every bucket of raspberries she let us eat on her kitchen floor when we were little, for all the silly rounds that she taught us in the car on trips across the country, for her meditation on love at our wedding amongst the lilacs, and for imparting in me and in us an undying curiosity about the world, a love for wondering, for asking the answerable and unanswerable questions, and for how to love your neighbors and your family and others with generosity of spirit. I got to thank her for a life of adventure and every refrain of caps for sale, 50 cents a cap. And I got to tell her how much I loved her, beyond words, beyond what I could say. Her final words to me, through tears and a kiss, were, I love you. I'll see you in heaven. Whether or not heaven is a place you arrive to, or the unfading ripples or seeds of love that are threaded through each of our lives and on through every new generation, I know, without questioning, that something undying about her is here with all of us. And I will feel that love for the rest of my life and think of her always, perhaps especially in the unanswerable questions of a 3 3/4-year-old.
I'm Nathan, one of her grandchildren. I have so many memories of my grandmother, and it's easy to think of the most adventurous ones, the most dramatic ones, the most fun ones, going on all the elder hostels David and I went on with both of them when we were children, to the Northwoods in Minnesota, out west in Wyoming, being cowboys, being junior zookeepers at the St. Louis Zoo, exploring colonial Williamsburg, our family trips to Tanzania and Costa Rica, they all stand out in bright color and laughter and time together. But when I think back on time with my grandmother, the times that stand out the most are much more simple and yet much more profound. I remember at their home in Des Moines, her taking us to see our grandfather at the university at Drake and making BLT sandwiches for us, feeding us raspberries from the garden, making sure we had our shoes on and our coats on, reading to us at night, cuddling with us on the couch not just sitting next to each other, but like essentially on each other. We almost couldn't get close enough. And I really credit that physicality, that love of just being close and hugging the people you care about to them and their love and our family. So, it's just, those all stand out to me because she made sure we were fed, we were clothed, and most of all, that we were listened to and heard. When she asked us questions and listened to our response, she was so present. She looked so deep in our eyes. She wanted to know every little detail of how we were feeling, and she really cared about the answer. She really cared about us, and that care was how she showed her love to us. She was always a mother and a wife, a sister. At the end of her life, she really was in that caretaker role full time. She was caretaker to her husband, our grandfather. At the end, she was caretaker to her sister. And of course to all of us. And, we've sort of, at the end, last Christmas, she sort of, was maybe disappointed by the fact that she had been focused so much on caretaking and, didn't get as much time as she thought she might without that perhaps responsibility. And, in that questioning of why that happened that way or how, how the end came for her, I remember talking to my love, Gigi, and she pointed out something really beautiful, which I'll always remember, and that's that she, perhaps after having taken care of all of us, her heart could be at peace, knowing we were all taken care of. She had done everything she could to make sure that we were taken care of and loved, and I still feel taken care of by her. I still feel so loved and taken care of by her. And it still shines all around me and in our family, in the songs we sing, in the stories we tell. And it was just sort of the air she breathed to be in love with us, to care for us in every little way. Yeah. I think I'll always feel taken care of by her, even now.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am Wanda's daughter-in-law and the wife of Mark. And as I was writing this, it's very hard to know where to start, but I'll give a few thoughts. It is very hard and amazing to consider all that Wanda has contributed to my life and the life of all of you here today and those of you who are all across the nation. I wondered if I should just focus on how she built the foundation of a family that has meant the world to me. Look at her 3 remarkable children, one of whom is the foundation of my life. These 3 Swanson children and their beloveds here today, they were created and influenced by a woman who embraced everything from science to art to religion to music to world cultures, everything that our beloveds have talked about. She and her remarkable husband have established in their home an environment of thinking, of laughing, of gentle kidding, of marveling at all this world has to offer. Every day when I look at Wanda's boy, and that's what they called him at church, Wanda's boy, I am grateful for this healthy, enriched background that she and Harold established. I could also focus on what she gave to the world, a model of generally cheerful efficiency and effectiveness with a heavy dose of goodness. Whether it was the extensive work of wrangling kids at a Campfire Girls meeting or a Cub Scout meeting, supporting a church's social mission, straightening out a professor's research laboratory, taking care of her parents, her sister, and many others, my mother-in-law mastered it. As Mark said, she was reared at a time when white middle-class women had very few options for professional achievement. While she began as an educator, she soon found that family and community investment would be her main contribution. So she worked hard to establish a daycare center. She led church and social initiatives. She developed a loving community. And of course, she established the next generation to feel loved. What a huge contribution to the world. And in closing, what I'd really like to focus on is, as Nathan has brought out so beautifully and so profoundly, she could see us. She saw, and her seeing and her connection was her expression of love. When I came into this family, a mere 36 years ago, she welcomed me, and I know this is true for Al too, she welcomed me with a love so profound that she left me little doubt that I had joined the right family. She encouraged me, she supported me, she provided me with advice, but only when I asked. She celebrated my achievements, and she offered help and support when I was in doubt. She asked me about my research. She asked me about my friends, my career, my goals, never in judgment, always out of true interest. When I started having children, Rachel and then Ben, she offered us the support that we needed, taking care of these two children enough to give us a break over the summer times and to build that connection of the next generation. She just saw what was needed. This ability to see and to check in was her hallmark. At our Christmases, Wanda would look around the room and she would see the person she had not talked to yet, and she would always say, no matter how much chaos was in that room, I want to hear about Karin's first semester at Luther. I want to know what Nathan is going to be doing over the summer and what David's life in Bhutan is like. I want to make sure I hear about the classes that Ben will take next semester, or the summer plans for Rachel. She loved the new people that were brought into the family. Her capacity and her desire to acquire knowledge and to love those around her is a trait that has benefited this beautiful family and the world overall.
I'm going to read a few notes from family and friends who were unable to be with us here today. And the first I am reading is from our first cousins, Nona Beth and Karen. They were actually from Dad's side of the family, but they were very much Mom's nieces. And they said, "This gathering is aptly named because for her whole existence, Aunt Wanda celebrated life. Through life's difficulties, losses, pains, and even depressions, Wanda never stopped appreciating her blessings and those around her. Her life is worthy of being a novel with a heroine you wish you could spend time with. We, her nieces, Nona and Karen, got to do just that. As children, we just accepted the love and attention, assuming everyone had an aunt who reliably sent them presents and cards, was delighted to see them, and gave warm, loving, real hugs freely. With time, we realized how special and rare that was. Throughout our lives, we could count on Aunt Wanda and Uncle Harold for anything. They were bonus parents. Every year after Christmas, our two families gathered in Kansas, which coincided with Karen's birthday, December 28th, today. Did we get her a card? We probably didn't, because that was Mom's job. Aunt Wanda thoughtfully made sure there was a birthday gift in addition to the extremely well-chosen Christmas presents. Those celebrations were such a life highlight that everyone was willing to travel to Utah one year, bringing spouses and children for Karen's 50th birthday party. No doubt others will talk about the good Wanda did in Des Moines for the church and community, energetic, efficient, and above all, effective in all her endeavors, always showing respect to others while helping them learn. Karen was still learning at age 65 when Wanda explained that when she bakes, she sets all the ingredients on one side of the table, and as she uses them, she sets them on the other side. News to Karen, and excellent advice. We shared Aunt Wanda's sorrow as dementia progressively took Uncle Harold away. Her strength and courage were not unexpected, but still amazing. But after Harold was no longer with us, it was a delight to see Wanda evolve as the funny and bright person she was alone, even while missing her husband. We were lucky to have our Aunt Wanda and the great memories she gave us. For icing on the cake, she bequeathed us exceptionally wonderful cousins, going on generation after generation. And then I'm going to share a couple of remembrances from dear friends of mine who got to know my folks by spending time with us and vacationing with us. And this first one is from my friend Andrea Wilder, who lives in North Wales. I met her when I was a student in London, and she got to know my folks as well. And she writes, about 40 years ago, I had the blessing of being invited to join the Swansons on their annual camping trip to Colorado. The day before we set off, I caught up with Wanda, who was busy making bean salad and other tasty snacks for us to enjoy at our mountain campsite. I took in the bright view from her airy kitchen, watching the clouds scudding hastily across the sky, and the heavens opened. Being British, and therefore obliged to comment on the weather in any given situation, I declared a little gloomily, "Oh, it's raining." Quick as a flash, Wanda smiled with the radiance of our star. "Liquid sunshine," she beamed. Two little words that so eloquently highlighted the difference between our worlds. To this day, whenever someone moans about the rain, which in North Wales is a lot, I borrow Wanda's remark. And maybe, like Wanda, we smile. And the other remembrance is from my friend Maureen, who was my freshman roommate in college and was kind of a bonus daughter to Mom. And she writes, I first met Wanda on dorm move-in day when I was a freshman in college. Celia and I had been assigned to be roommates. As my parents and I walked in with my belongings, we saw Wanda trying out each of the twin beds to see which one was the best, so that Celia could have that one. I had no idea there might be a difference in mattresses. Wanda and I warmed up to each other pretty quickly, and I got to share in all the care packages she sent to Celia, Aunt Dorothy cookies packed in popcorn and other wonderful goodies. I spent a wonderful Thanksgiving at Wanda's parents' farm and got to know the family better. And after Celia and I had spent our junior year in England, Harold and Wanda came for a month-long tour of England and Scotland. They welcomed me on the trip, and we had such a wonderful time. At one point on that trip, I remember Harold saying something funny and Wanda laughing and laughing. She had such a wonderful and memorable laugh. She said to me, "I can't believe that after all these years, Harold still makes me laugh." That's when Harold and Wanda became my role models for a loving relationship. Through the years, I have been privileged to share some holidays and some ordinary days with Wanda. There was one time when she made me my very own apple pie. I got one of Wanda's apple pies all to myself. When I think about, oops, I've got to turn the page. Where did it go? Oh dear. I've lost the second page. Let me check, just a second. All right. But Wanda really stepped up and embraced me when my husband was going through all of his scary cancer surgeries and terrible recoveries. My mother, while still alive at 90, had dementia and was only partly present. Wanda sent me a wonderful letter telling me she knew what I was going through. She shared with me her experience of having 2 small children when Harold underwent his bypass surgery, the worry and the fear she'd felt. I realized as I read that letter and wept at being understood that what I really needed at that moment was a mom, and Wanda, without hesitation, stepped in to fill that role for me. We wrote back and forth several times as my husband recovered, and each letter from her was a gift. A big thank you to all the Swansons and Hecks for sharing your wonderful mother and grandmother with me. Maureen.
After all of those memories that were shared, let's have a moment of reflection and prayer. Gracious God, creator of life and giver of love, may we sense that you are among us today as we remember, grieve, and are filled with thanks for Wanda's life. In this hour, help us to be brave in our remembering, to give thanks for the first square dance she had with Harold, to be thankful for long road trips, for pop-up campers and mountain streams, to be grateful for the gift of her apple pies and pantry smells, for questions that went deeper than small talk. May we be thankful for all of the curiosity she had for the world, for the way she welcomed babies and grown children alike. And with that same thankfulness, let us live lives of love as she did. Help us in the midst of our sorrow to be honest as she was. Help us to name how much we will miss her curiosity and her organizing energy. Let us name, even in our sorrow, her playfulness, her steadiness and wise care, her patience. And let us trust that tears and laughter can live side by side. Holy One, as we remember Wanda's life of faith and service, her years of nurturing family and friends, her passion for justice and care for those in need, her devotion to Harold, to each child, grandchild, and great-grandchild. Open our hearts in compassion to one another. Let the love that she shared continue to shape us. Hold us now in your tenderness. Gather our questions, our gratitude, and our grief. And as Wanda is with you, and she has gone before us, let us rest in the mystery of this life that is filled with wonder and curiosity and love. And now let us pray that prayer that Wanda prayed every Sunday, sitting in the pews of this very room. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Friends, I invite you to rise and sing a hymn that captures the vibrancy of Wanda, Gift of Love, hymn 397. Friends, in this moment, we commend Wanda Jean Swanson back to the God that gave her to us. So join me. Into your hands, Holy One, we commend Wanda, a mother, a friend, a partner, a grandmom, a great-grandmom. We do this in the sure hope that she is held in your light even now. And we thank you, God, for the gift of knowing Wanda's love, her curiosity and questions, her love for family, her playfulness. For in knowing her, we have known God's goodness. And so we entrust her to you in the hope of the resurrection, for we hope that when the trumpet shall sound, the dead shall be raised, and we will meet again. Until that day, we will meet again. Amen. You may be seated. Wanda loved to joke that when she heard this tune from Handel's Messiah played, she would sit up in her very funeral herself, for the beauty and vibrance of this song could raise the very dead. So I invite you to enjoy this tune from Handel's Messiah. Wouldn't you know, Wanda would pick a tune where the trumpet and the soloist had an intricate conversation between themselves. Will you stand for a final benediction? If we speak in the many languages of humans and angels, but have not love, we are only noise. If we understand deep mysteries, ask brilliant questions, and can name the problems of the world, but have not love, we are nothing. Wanda Swanson knew God's love, and she shared it with each of us in curiosity and care, in songs and stories, in apple pie and well-worn rituals, in the long years of devotion and tender days at the end. Wanda's love was kind. Her love made room for children in basements and backyards, for grandchildren on adventures and in conversation, and for friends in community. Her love believed in her friends and beloved. Her love endures in each of us, in her great-grandchildren and the generations yet to come, in the stories we keep telling and the songs we will keep singing. Yet the greatest of these was her love. And now we will close with the hymn that she sang every Sunday in that small church in the fields of Kansas, till we meet again. God be with you. Amen.